Welcome to Netflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. The film begins with a technology scientist named Flip waking up from sleep. He has his robots cheer him up and prepare his breakfast. It becomes apparent that he is a very genius scientist who invented these robots. While he is having breakfast, the robot Weibo talks to him and informs him of news in the newspaper stating that his university might shut down due to its debts. Flip tells him that he will pay off the university's debts once he finishes his invention. He asks Weibo about today's agenda, feeling like he forgot something important. At that moment, his fiancée Sarah calls him while trying on a dress for their wedding, which is today. Flip has forgotten about the wedding entirely, so Sarah meets him at the university. She reminds him that the wedding is at 6 o'clock and warns him not to forget because he has done so multiple times before due to being preoccupied with his inventions. She threatens to end their relationship if he doesn't show up this time. Flip promises her that he won't forget the wedding. Afterward, he heads to his lab to work on his invention. His colleague Wilson visits him and asks what he is inventing, but Flip refuses to tell him. Wilson often steals Flip's ideas and inventions to sell them for large sums of money. It becomes clear that Wilson envies and hates Flip because Flip is much smarter than him. Wilson admits to stealing Flip's ideas and even threatens to steal Sarah and marry her, confident that Flip will forget the wedding again. Flip ignores Wilson's words and later goes home to get dressed for the wedding. He asks Weibo why he didn't remind him about the wedding. Weibo replies that Flip never told him the time of the wedding because, as usual, he forgot. Suddenly, Flip notices on his computer that the equation he's been working on needs to be changed, which means his invention might succeed. He rushes to his lab and begins working on the invention, completely forgetting about the wedding. The lab explodes, and Flip initially thinks his invention failed. Meanwhile, Sarah is heartbroken because Flip didn't show up for the wedding as she had anticipated. She decides to break up with him. Wilson, who attended the wedding, is delighted and mocks Flip. That night, Flip feels frustrated over his failed invention. He kicks the cooling device in anger, lamenting that he wasted 2 years of his life on an invention that ultimately failed. As he prepares to leave the lab, the cooling device suddenly opens on its own. To his surprise, the invention worked. It turns out to be a green, rubbery substance with incredible properties, such as the ability to fly, change shape, and move with great flexibility and speed. Flip is overjoyed and has Weibo film him holding the substance. However, when the camera flashes, the substance goes wild, bouncing hysterically around the room, out of the house, into neighbors' homes, and causing chaos before returning to Flip's house. He manages to catch it and names it Flubber. He discovers its weakness is light, which is why it was bouncing uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Sarah leaves the wedding in tears and finds Wilson waiting to drive her home. He tries to console her, clearly aiming to win her over and marry her. Flip begins experimenting with Flubber, placing it in a cooling device to enhance its properties. He realizes it can make objects fly and decides to use it to make anything airborne. At that moment, he notices it's 6:30 and remembers the wedding. He prepares to leave, but Weibo stops him, pointing out that it's 6:30 in the morning, not evening. Disheartened, Flip goes to the university to apologize to Sarah. He explains that he missed the wedding because he was working on Flubber, which has extraordinary abilities like flying and generating energy. He assures her that the invention will help pay off the university's debts to prevent its closure. Sarah interrupts him, saying there's no excuse for breaking her heart and missing their wedding for the 3rd time. Flip insists that he's doing all this for their future. To prove Flubber's capabilities, he puts it in his pocket and tells Sarah he will jump out the window, trusting Flubber to save him before he hits the ground. Unfortunately, Flubber slips out of his pocket and Flip falls to the ground. Sarah assumes he's lying to manipulate her into forgiving him. She tells him their relationship is over and walks away. At the same time, a young man named Bentley comes home and tells his father, Max, a businessman, that Flip failed him in chemistry, causing him to be removed from the basketball team. Max, who pays a lot of money to the university for his son to pass, promises to force Flip to raise Bentley's grades. He orders his men, Mike and Smith, to spy on Flip and find his weaknesses to blackmail him into compliance. Mike and Smith go to Flip's house and watch him. In the lab, Flip develops a cream with the same properties as Flubber, such as speed and flight. He tests it by applying it to a golf ball, which bounces rapidly out of the lab window, hitting Smith on the head before flying into the sky and disappearing. Flip decides to test the cream on something heavier, like a bowling ball, to see if it can also bounce quickly. The bowling ball bounces out of the window, hitting Mike on the head before flying into the sky and eventually landing back on Mike and Smith. Flip then invents a liquid with the same properties as the cream. When Mike and Smith step on the liquid outside the lab, they are launched into the air and land in a tree. This gives Flip the idea to remove a car's engine and replace replace it with a cooling device containing Flubber to make the car fly. The experiment succeeds, and Flip gains control of the flying car. He decides to visit Sarah at her house to show her the car and win her back. When he arrives, he finds Wilson with her, proposing marriage. Sarah rejects Wilson, saying she doesn't want to commit to anyone right now and needs to sleep because she plans to attend the university basketball game the next day. So Wilson tells her, "I'll join you for the match," and offers her a week-long trip if her team loses. However, if her team wins, she won't go on the trip. Sarah agrees and goes inside the house. Sarah talks about him, and he attends the match with her, offering the same deal: a week-long trip if her team loses, but no trip if her team wins. Sarah agrees again and enters the house. Meanwhile, Philip overhears everything and becomes very upset because Sarah no longer seems to think about him. He returns home feeling sad and goes to his room to sleep. At this point, the robot Weibo gets an idea to create a hologram of a girl to comfort Philip and help him forget what happened. But as Philip wakes up, he tells Weibo that he will ensure Sarah's basketball team wins the match so she won't go on the trip with Wilson. Philip goes to the stadium and sprays his invention on the basketball. Later, he returns home and sprays the same substance on some nails. The next morning, he heads to the stadium, enters the team's locker room, and places the nails in the shoes of Sarah's team players. This is to help them jump higher and win the game. Unfortunately, Sarah's team is very weak, and the opposing team is much stronger. They even score 2 goals in the first minute of the match. Wilson is, of course, thrilled. Philip sits next to him and Sarah to watch the game. Unfortunately, Sarah's team loses in the first half. At this point, Philip applies the Flubber cream to his hands and shakes hands with all the players on Sarah's team. This activates the substance in their bodies, enhancing their agility and enabling them to jump very high. They manage to score many goals and dribble the ball at incredible speed. Eventually, they win the match easily, despite initially trailing by a large margin. Philip is overjoyed because he prevented his beloved Sarah from going on the trip with Wilson. Later, he talks to her and admits that her team won because he applied the Flubber cream. However, she ignores his confession, gets into the car with Wilson, and drives away, leaving him behind. Philip is deeply upset and decides to return home. Meanwhile, Max, a businessman, is in his car and is shocked to see Philip's car flying through the sky. He tells his son what he saw, hinting at malicious intentions. When Philip returns home, he is very sad. He confides in Weibo, saying he loves Sarah, regrets what he did, and wishes she would forgive him and give him another chance to prove his love. Weibo secretly records a video for Sarah without telling Philip and delivers it to her house. The video reveals how much Philip loves her. Sarah decides to forgive him, goes to his house, and wakes him up. Philip takes her on a ride in his flying car, which amazes her. She suggests that his invention could save their university by paying off its debts if they sell the idea to a car company. Philip agrees with her and returns home. Suddenly, they find Max waiting for them. He offers to pay off all the university's debts in exchange for the Flubber substance that makes the car fly. However, Philip refuses because he knows Max is a bad person. The next morning, Philip takes the car and flies to the Ford company, where he offers to sell the flying car. Meanwhile, Max's men break into Philip's house to steal Flubber. Weibo sees them and tries to fight them off, but Max hits Weibo with a stick, breaking it. They steal Flubber and leave. When Philip returns home, he finds the house in disarray and Weibo broken and no longer functioning. Suddenly, he notices a message on Weibo's screen before it shuts down completely. Philip is heartbroken and talks to Sarah, explaining that even if he repairs Weibo, it won't remember anything because all its memories and independent artificial intelligence are gone. Then he remembers the word Weibo wrote and types it into the computer. He discovers that Weibo recorded a video as a hologram in the form of a girl, revealing that it saved the method of its creation in a file on the computer, along with its memories. Philip is overjoyed and decides to recreate Weibo, but first he plans to retrieve the Flubber substance from Max. Philip and Sarah go to Max's house and propose to share the formula with him on the condition that he shows them the substance. Max agrees and takes them to the room where it's stored. On the way, Philip uses his remote control to operate the flying car, causing it to hover over the house. When they reach the room, they discover that Wilson is working with Max and trying to steal the Flubber formula. Philip tricks Max by claiming the cream he has is just moisturizer and applies it to himself and Sarah. He then opens the cooling device, retrieves Flubber, and uses the car's spotlights to create chaos, as light is Flubber's weakness. The plan works, and Sarah punches Wilson in the face multiple times until he loses consciousness. When she notices Max trying to escape, she throws Flubber at him, hitting him in the head and causing him to fall into a swimming pool. Flubber returns and enters Wilson's mouth, moving rapidly inside his body until he loses consciousness again. Finally, Philip and Sarah leave together. Some Sometime later, Philip and Sarah get married. They ride in the flying car to spend their honeymoon together, and the movie ends. If you enjoyed this film, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.